Well, joining us now is Miriam Schler. She's the executive director of the Tel Aviv Crisis Center for Sexual Assault, and Orit Sulitzeanu. She's the executive director of the Association of Rape Crisis Centers. So, I just struggle even talking about this. Reading this report was very difficult. So I really can't even imagine the disturbing work that went into collecting these accounts. Orit, I'd like to start with you. Please break down some of the testimonies that were given.
I want to be very careful what I will say, because the things that are written in the report are not something regular people should hear. I will say that maybe I will explain what did we try to do. We try to analyze information that we collected from various kinds of resources. Some are sources, some are open ones that everybody could see, and some are not, more confidential information. And we try to understand what has happened. And we saw, as you said in the beginning, that first of all, in 4 different areas, these horrific, brutal, sadistic things happened. And second, we categorize the different ways that Hamas did what they did. It's very hard, but maybe I will just say that, for example, how come in so many places Hamas terrorists mutilated the genitals of women and men? It happened not in one place, but in many places. So this means that it was not one crazy terrorist. To my understanding, it was something that they got instructions to do, because if it happens systematically, that means that somebody gave them the systematic instruction. And this is what we try to show. The exact categories are very hard to hear, and I'm not sure it's appropriate to even talk about it in television.
Well,
we should not talk about these sadistic, horrible terrorists, but it's important to read it, and everyone that wants to can read it. Yeah.
I'd like to turn to you, Miriam, and I do understand what you're saying, Orit, and that we shouldn't, that obviously this is very, very difficult to discuss, but I do believe that it is important, especially in an English news channel, that we are discussing the details of what came out in this report. So Miriam, we don't have to get into everything, but if you could just give us an idea of some of the details that we heard in these accounts.
I think what Orit said was extremely important for us to understand, because we're facing an unbelievable, unfathomable, deafening silence of the world, of women's organizations, of human rights organizations that either denied the fact that there was sexual assault, or that said that it was justified because it was a tool for liberation. And this is something that has to be categorically denounced no matter what. And it's absolutely infuriating that this is still going on, that we need to graphically depict what happened in order for us to believe the victims and the survivors. We thought that we made major progress in the Me Too movement. We thought that we were able to understand and believe survivors right now. There is no case in general in sexual assault or rape where we ever have forensic evidence or people being filmed or people coming out and graphically describing what happened to them. And the fact that there's all this pressure on the survivors to come forward is just more of the abuse that we're seeing them go through, because there never should be a demand like that. We have more than enough evidence. The report thoroughly goes through testimonies of pathologists, of Zaka first responders, of eyewitnesses at Nova watching gang rapes, of the bodies that we saw that the genitals were mutilated, of testimonies from the Hamas terrorists themselves, of testimonies of hostages that came back with absolute stories of women being raped at gunpoint, we have testimonies of doctors, of hostages, men, boys also being abused sexually. We have testimonies of people themselves who are eyewitnesses in the different areas that Orit said. And these are things that are just absolutely beyond cruel and brutal, in addition to the massacre. As Orit was saying, this was a systematic mechanism of terror. It was a weapon of war, an unprecedented weapon of war. And we see that this wasn't just something that happened with one random terrorist. This was something that was absolutely systematic.
In going through this report, Miriam, I'm interested to understand, I guess beyond obviously this understanding that these sexual assaults were carried out on a systematic basis. What stood out? I mean, what was new in terms of information that was revealed by this report?
I think that it's a collaboration of the collection of everything that exists, and it shows that there wasn't that the same system or the same brutalities or the same methods were used again and again and again. And it wasn't something that just that they were sent with a mission. That's something that we can see clearly that rises from this report. In addition to very, very, very difficult testimonies, firsthand testimonies of acts beyond the sexual assault and beyond the abuse, the mutilation, the physical abuse, the cruelty, the weapons that were involved, the terror.
Orit, I'd like to turn to you now. Was there anything that came out of this report that Israel was not aware of?
I think, I wanted to, you have to see this picture in a big way. You see, Israel has to deal with what we usually, Miriam and my colleague, and I and all of our colleagues from the rape crisis centers deal with every day, the silencing. The silencing of the issue, not believing. We all of us who work on the issue of combating sexual violence, we talk with women who have suffered horrific things, and these women have to convince that indeed it happened, because it doesn't always show in the body. And now what we as organizations and NGOs deal with, our country has to deal with. And it's not easy. It's not easy to deal with silencing. So I'm very, we all have to fight that all on the national level and at the international level. Then, as we said, and you have to understand, this is the first report done in the world about what has happened. And this report it will take time, and more information will come out. We have to understand that the testimonies from first hand maybe will never come out, and maybe in time. But the new thing is to see the big picture, the macro system. It's like meta-analysis of all of the information and seeing the big picture. The big picture is horrific. People who live in Israel maybe understand that more, but people around the world don't understand what we have suffered. I heard people to say, the 7th of October, okay, one day, now get over with that. Look what's going on in Gaza. Okay, we're looking at what's going on in Gaza, and it's very sad, and none of us wanted this war. But what happened to us, it's not to the 7th of October and that's it. It's a scar on our society, a scar that we in the rape crisis centers will have to help many women that suffered from that, and other women that are suffering just right now. And it's a scar on all of us and a trauma on all of us. And this is what I think the Israeli society understands that very well. The big wide world sometimes does not understand that.
Yeah, Miriam, I'd like to turn to you and kind of get your thoughts on that as well. Absolutely, the psychological trauma that the entire state of Israel is facing right now as a result of the atrocities that took place on October 7th continues. But obviously, when it comes to sexual violence, it has been very, very difficult to have this conversation publicly and get into the nitty-gritty, the horrible details that we're not even, fully discussing right now, just because of the impact that it will have on the men and women of this country. And how do you kind of go about, as organizations that have been working in this sphere, for many, many years now, how do you go about approaching that?
Well, first of all, I think it's really important to understand that if the average person it's really, really difficult for them to hear these stories and internalize them and listen to it. How that makes people who are survivors of sexual assault, what it's doing to them and what's doing to their psyche. And there's no doubt that this was chosen as a deliberate method of psychological terror. In addition to kidnapping, they knew where to hit exactly the most sensitive spots of the Israeli psyche. And what we see now is the general public and the general whole society is going through an extremely difficult time just trying to process everything that happened. But for survivors, this is an unbearable situation because it, on one level, it echoes the discourse that we have around survivors, as Orit was saying, when we have a struggle that we don't believe survivors. So this is just reinforcing and re-victimizing and re-traumatizing everything that they felt at the time that they were abused not to deal with October 7th, and it's bringing all those terrible memories up. It's very, very, very triggery. It gives us the impression that people don't believe us again, that we're crazy, that it didn't really happen. And also it's just these visuals are very, very difficult for the public in general. For people who survive sexual assault, we're having a surge of lots and lots of post-trauma, lots of reenactment, lots of re-traumatization, people turning to the rape crisis centers all over Israel with serious, they're in serious distress. And there's been a resurge of their post-trauma and the implications of the sexual assault that they experienced in the past.
Orit, I'd like to turn back to you for one last question. I mean, this report has now come out. The question is, what comes next? Are we going to receive perhaps renewed international investigation into what is taking place? How will this impact the current investigations that are taking place into the sexual assault that occurred on October 7th?
Our duty is to be the voice of the women who are silenced right now. We try to be very, very accurate and very systematic. And every information that we wrote in this report, we wrote a reference. Where did we get that? And we organize the whole information, and I hope it will help. You know, this is our mission. This is our job. This is our obligation to the women who are not alive, and to the women who are alive, the girls who were murdered, and maybe the girls that are alive. It's very complex, this kind of investigation, and it's especially complex because Hamas was so sadistic and so efficient that they killed most of the people. This is not easy. But I think if the world does not want to listen to that, the world will pay the price. If we want to be a real humanity and real humankind, which are moral and behave according to moral ideologies, we have to acknowledge what happened, condemn what happened, and help the ones that who have suffered.
All right, Orit Sulitzeanu, thank you so much for joining us and breaking that down. And also Miriam Schler, both are executive directors of the Tel Aviv Crisis Center.
It's very important for me to say, whoever's watching us, because these contents is extremely, extremely triggering. It's really important for me to let everyone who's watching us that we are here for you. 1202, a hotline for women, 1203, a hotline for men. We believe you. We're here for you in a complete, discreet, and anonymous environment. So please turn to us.
Thank you so much for joining us, and very important that you said that.